Theresa May. Theresa Mary May MP is a British politician who has served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and leader of the Conservative Party since July 2016, the second woman to hold both positions. She has been the Member of Parliament for Maidenhead since 1997. Ideologically, she identifies herself as a one-nation conservative, the daughter of Zaidee Brasier and Hubert Brasier, a vicar. May grew up in Oxfordshire. From 1977 until 1983, she worked for the Bank of England, and from 1985 until 1997, at the Association for Payment Clearing Services, also serving as a councillor for Durnsford in Merton. After unsuccessful attempts to be elected to the House of Commons in 1992 and 1994, she was elected as the MP for Maidenhead in the 1997 general election. From 1999 to 2010, May held a number of roles in the shadow cabinets of William Hague, Iain Duncan Smith, Michael Howard, and David Cameron, including Shadow Transport Secretary and Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. She was also chairman of the Conservative Party from 2002 to 2003. After the formation of a coalition government following the 2010 general election, May was appointed Home Secretary and Minister for Women and Equalities, giving up the latter role in 2012. Reappointed after the Conservative victory in the 2015 general election, she went on to become the longest-serving Home Secretary since James Tutoried, over 60 years. Previously, during her tenure, she pursued reform of the Police Federation, implemented a harder line on drugs policy including the banning of cat, oversaw the introduction of elected police and crime commissioners, the deportation of Abu Qatada, the creation of the National Crime Agency, and brought in additional restrictions on immigration. Following Cameron's resignation on the 24th of June 2016, May won the ensuing leadership election on the 11th of July, and was appointed Prime Minister 2 days later. As Prime Minister, May began the process of withdrawing the UK from the European Union, triggering Article 50 on the 29th of March 2017. May has faced criticism from opponents for her dealings with US President Donald Trump, including her response to his Muslim ban, for inviting Trump to a state visit, and her response to Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. In April 2017, May announced an early general election in June. This resulted in a hung parliament, in which the number of Conservative seats fell from 330 to 318. Prompting her to broker a deal with Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party in order to stay in power through a minority government. Early life and education. Born on 1 October 1956 in Eastbourne, Sussex, May is the only child of Zaidee Mary and Hubert Brasier. Her father was a Church of England clergyman who was chaplain of an Eastbourne hospital. He later became vicar of Enston with Haythrop and finally of St Mary's at Wheatley, to the east of Oxford. May's mother was a strong supporter of the Conservative Party, where May's father was vicar, and where May married. May was educated primarily in the state sector, but with a short spell at an independent Catholic school. She initially attended Haythrop Primary School, a state school in Haythrop, followed by St. Juliana's Convent School for Girls, a Roman Catholic independent school in Begbrook, which closed in 1984. When she was 13, May won a place at the former Halton Park Girls' Grammar School, a state school in Wheatley. During her time as a pupil, the Oxfordshire education system was reorganised, and the school became the new Wheatley Park Comprehensive School. May then attended the University of Oxford, where she read geography at St Hugh's College, graduating with a second-class BA degree in 1977. Early career. Between 1977 and 1983, May worked at the Bank of England, and from 1985 to 1997 as a financial consultant and senior advisor in international affairs at the Association for Payment Clearing Services. It was during this period that May both married and lost her parents. She married Philip May in September 1980, but her parents died when she was 25, her father in a car accident in 1981 and her mother of multiple sclerosis the following year. May later stated she was sorry they never saw me elected as a Member of Parliament. May served as a councillor for Durnsford ward on the London Borough of Merton from 1986 to 1994, where she was chairman of education and deputy group leader and housing spokesman. In the 1992 general election, May stood unsuccessfully for the safe Labour seat of North West Durham, coming second to incumbent MP Hilary Armstrong by 12,747 votes to 26,734, with future Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron coming third. May then stood at the 1994 Barking by-election, which was prompted by the death of Labour MP Joe Richardson. The seat had been continuously held by Labour since it was created in 1945, and Labour candidate Margaret Hodge was expected to win easily, which she did, with 13,704 votes. May came a distant third with 1976 votes. Ahead of the 1997 general election, May was selected as the Conservative candidate for Maidenhead, a new seat which was created from parts of the seats of Windsor and Maidenhead and Wokingham. She was elected with 25,344 votes, almost double the total of second-placed Andrew Terence Ketteringham of the Liberal Democrats, who took 13,363 votes. Early political career. Having entered Parliament, May became a member of William Hague's front-bench opposition team as shadow spokesman for schools, disabled people, and women. She became the first of the 1997 MPs to enter the shadow cabinet when in 1999 she was appointed shadow education and employment secretary. After the 2001 election, the new Conservative leader Iain Duncan Smith kept her in the shadow cabinet, moving her to the transport portfolio. May was appointed the first female chairman of the Conservative Party in July 2002. During her speech at the 2002 Conservative Party conference, she explained why, in her view, her party must change. "You know what people call us, the nasty party." In 2003, she was sworn of the Privy Council and appointed Shadow Secretary of State for Transport after Michael Howard's election as Conservative Party and Opposition Leader in November that year. In June 2004, she was moved to become Shadow Secretary of State for the Family. Following the 2005 general election, she was also made Shadow Secretary of State for Culture, Media, and Sport. David Cameron appointed her Shadow Leader of the House of Commons in December 2005 after his accession to the leadership. In January 2009, May was made Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. On the 6th of May 2010, May was re-elected MP for Maidenhead with an increased majority of 16,769 to 60% of the vote. This followed an earlier failed attempt to unseat her in 2005 as one of the Liberal Democrats' leading decapitation strategy targets. Home Secretary. May 2010. On the 12th of May 2010, when May was appointed Home Secretary and Minister for Women and Equality by Prime Minister David Cameron as part of his first cabinet, she became the fourth woman to hold one of the British great offices of state, after Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Beckett and Jackie Smith. As Home Secretary, May was also a member of the National Security Council. She was the longest-serving Home Secretary for over 60 years, since James Tutor-Reed, who served over 6 years and 2 months from August 1945 to October 1951. May's appointment as Home Secretary was somewhat unexpected, with Chris Grayling having served as Shadow Home Secretary in opposition. May's debut as Home Secretary involved overturning several of the previous Labour government's measures on data collection and surveillance in England and Wales, by way of a government bill which became the Identity Documents Act 2010. She brought about the abolition of the Labour government's National Identity Card and database scheme and reformed the regulations on the retention of DNA samples for suspects, and controls on the use of CCTV cameras. In May 2010, May announced the adjournment of the deportation to the United States of alleged computer hacker Gary McKinnon. She also suspended the registration scheme for carers of children and vulnerable people, with May saying that the measures were draconian. You were assumed to be guilty until you were proven innocent, and told you were able to work with children. On the 4th of August 2010, it was reported that May was scrapping the former Labour government's proposed Go Orders scheme to protect women from domestic violence by banning abusers from the victim's home. In June 2010, May faced her first major national security incident as Home Secretary with the Cumbria shootings. She delivered her first major speech in the House of Commons as Home Secretary in a statement on this incident, later visiting the victims with the Prime Minister. Also in June 2010, May banned the Indian Muslim preacher Zakir Naik from entering the United Kingdom. According to The Telegraph, a Home Office official who disagreed with this decision was suspended. In late June 2010, May announced plans for a temporary cap on UK visas for non-EU migrants. The move raised concerns about the impact on the British economy. In August 2013, May supported the detention of David Miranda, partner of Guardian journalist Glenn Greenwald, under the Terrorism Act 2000, saying that critics of the Metropolitan Police action needed to think about what they are condoning. Lib Dem peer and former Director of Public Prosecutions Ken MacDonald accused May of an ugly and unhelpful attempt to implicate those who were concerned about the police action of condoning terrorism. The High Court subsequently acknowledged there were indirect implications for press freedom, but ruled the detention legal. May also championed legislation popularly dubbed the Snoopers Charter, requiring Internet and mobile service providers to keep records of Internet usage, voice calls, messages, and email for up to a year in case police requested access to the records while investigating a crime. The Liberal Democrats had blocked the first attempt, but after the Conservative Party obtained a majority in the 2015 general election, May announced a new draft investigatory powers bill similar to the draft communications data bill, although with more limited powers and additional oversight. Police and crime. Speaking at the Association of Chief Police Officers conference in June 2010, May announced radical cuts to the Home Office budget, likely to lead to a reduction in police numbers. In July 2010, May presented the House of Commons with proposals for a fundamental review of the previous Labour government's security and counter-terrorism legislation, including stop and search powers, and her intention to review the 28-day limit on detaining terrorist suspects without charge. In July 2010, May announced a package of reforms to policing in England and Wales in the House of Commons. The previous Labour government's Central Crime Agency, SOCA, was to be replaced by a new National Crime Agency. In common with the Conservative Party 2010 general election manifesto's flagship proposal for a big society based on voluntary action. May also proposed increasing the role of civilian reservists for crime control. The reforms were rejected by the opposition Labour Party, following the actions of some members of Black Bloc in vandalising allegedly tax-avoiding shops and businesses on the day of the March 2011 Tuck March. The Home Secretary unveiled reforms curbing the right to protest, including giving police extra powers to remove masked individuals, and to police social networking sites to prevent illegal protest without police consent or notification. In July 2013, May welcomed the fact that crime had fallen by more than 10% under the coalition government, while still being able to make savings. She said that this was partly due to the government removing red tape and scrapping targets to allow the police to concentrate on crime fighting. In 2014, May delivered a speech to the Police Federation, in which she criticized aspects of the culture of the police force. In the speech, she said, on the 9th of December 2010, in the wake of violent student demonstrations in central London against increases to higher education tuition fees, May praised the actions of the police in controlling the demonstrations, but was described by the Daily Telegraph as under growing political pressure due to her handling of the protests. In December 2010, May declared that deployment of water cannon by police forces in mainland Britain was an operational decision which had been resisted until now by senior police officers. She rejected their use following the widespread rioting in summer 2011 and said, "The way we police in Britain is not through use of water cannon. The way we police in Britain is through consent of communities." May said, "I condemn utterly the violence in Tottenham. Such disregard for public safety and property will not be tolerated, and the Metropolitan Police have my full support in restoring order." In the aftermath of the riot, May urged the identification of as many as possible of the young criminals involved. She said, "When I was in Manchester last week, the issue was raised to me about the anonymity of juveniles who are found guilty of crimes of this sort. The Crown Prosecution Service is to order prosecutors to apply for anonymity to be lifted in any youth case they think is in the public interest. The law currently protects the identity of any suspect under the age of 18, even if they're convicted. But it also allows for an application to have such restrictions lifted, if deemed appropriate." May added that, "What I've asked for is that CPS guidance should go to prosecutors to say that where possible, they should be asking for the anonymity of juveniles who are found guilty of criminal activity to be lifted." Antisocial behavior. In July 2010, May proposed to review the previous Labour government's antisocial behaviour legislation, signalling the abolition of the antisocial behaviour order. She identified the policy's high level of failure, with almost half of ASBOs breached between 2000 and 2008, leading to fast-track criminal convictions. May proposed a less punitive, community-based approach to tackling social disorder. May suggested that antisocial behavior policy must be turned on its head, reversing the ASBO's role as the flagship crime control policy legislation under Labour. Former Labour Home Secretaries David Blunkett and Alan Johnson expressed their disapproval of the proposals. Drug policy. Bundles. In July 2013, May decided to ban the stimulant cat, against the advice of the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs. The council reached the conclusion that there was insufficient evidence it caused health problems. Explaining the change in the classification, May said, "The decision to bring cat under control is finely balanced and takes into account the expert scientific advice and these broader concerns and pointed out that the product had already been banned in the majority of other EU member states, as well as most of the G8 countries including Canada and the US. A report on cat use by the ACMD published in January 2013 had noted the product had been associated with acute psychotic episodes, chronic liver disease and family breakdown. However, it concluded that there is no risk of harm for most users, and recommended that cat remain uncontrolled due to lack of evidence for these associations. Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker accused May of suppressing proposals to treat rather than prosecute minor drug offenders from a report into drug policy commissioned by the Home Office. The Home Office denied that its officials had considered this as part of their strategy. Baker cited difficulties in working with May as the reason for his resignation from the Home Office in the run-up to the 2015 general election. Immigration. In 2010, May promised to bring the level of net migration down to less than 100,000. In February 2015, The Independent reported, the Office for National Statistics announced a net flow of 298,000 migrants to the UK in the 12 months to September 2014, up from 210,000 in the previous year. In total, 624,000 people migrated to the UK in the year ending September 2014, and 327,000 left in the same period. Statistics showed significant increases in migration among both non-EU citizens, up 49,000 to 292,000, and EU citizens, which rose by 43,000 to 251,000. May rejected the European Union's proposal of compulsory refugee quotas. She said that it was important to help people living in war-zone regions and refugee camps, but not the ones who are strong and rich enough to come to Europe. In May 2016, the Daily Telegraph reported that she had tried to save £4 million by rejecting an intelligence project to use aircraft surveillance to detect illegal immigrant boats. Family migration. In June 2012, May announced that new restrictions would be introduced, intended to reduce the number of non-European Economic Area family migrants. The changes were mostly intended to apply to new applicants after the 9th of July 2012. The new rules came into effect from the 9th of July 2012, allowing only those British citizens earning more than £18,600 to bring their spouse or their child to live with them in the UK. This figure would rise significantly in cases where visa applications are also made for children. They also increased the current 2-year probationary period for partners to 5 years. The rules also prevent any adult and elderly dependents from settling in the UK unless they can demonstrate that, as a result of age, illness or disability, they require a level of long-term personal care that can only be provided by a relative in the UK. An MP, who was concerned about this, addressed May in Parliament as to whether she had examined the impact on communities and families on modest incomes, but he received no direct response. The human rights group Liberty concluded that the new rules showed scant regard to the impact they would have on genuine families. The all-party parliamentary group on migration conducted an evidence-based inquiry into the impact of the rules, and concluded in the report that the rules were causing very young children to be separated from their parents and could exile British citizens from the UK. Deportation decisions. The 14th of July 2011 at the Conservative Party conference in October 2011. While arguing that the Human Rights Act needed to be amended, May gave the example of a foreign national who the courts ruled was allowed to remain in the UK because, and I am not making this up, he had a pet cat. In response, the Royal Courts of Justice issued a statement denying that this was the reason for the tribunal's decision in that case, and stating that the real reason was that he was in a genuine relationship with a British partner, and owning a pet cat was simply one of many pieces of evidence given to show that the relationship was genuine. The Home Office had failed to apply its own rules for dealing with unmarried partners of people settled in the UK. Amnesty International said May's comments only fueled myths and misconceptions about the Human Rights Act, and Justice Secretary Kenneth Clarke subsequently called May's comments laughable and childlike. In June 2012, May was found in contempt of court by Judge Barry Cotter, and stood accused of totally unacceptable and regrettable behaviour, being said to have shown complete disregard for a legal agreement to free an Algerian from a UK immigration detention centre, as she eventually allowed the prisoner to be freed. May avoided further sanctions, including fines or imprisonment. May responded to a Supreme Court decision in November 2013 to overturn her predecessor Jackie Smith's revocation of Iraqi-born terror suspect Al-Jedah's British citizenship by ordering it to be revoked for a second time, making him the first person to be stripped twice of British citizenship. May was accused by Lord Roberts of being willing to allow someone to die to score a political point over the deportation of mentally ill Nigerian man Issa Marazu. According to Muaz's solicitor, May had arranged for the asylum seeker, who was said to be near death after a 100-day hunger strike, to be deported by a chartered private jet. To strengthen the Home Office's tough stance, an end-of-life plan was reportedly offered to Marazu, who was one of a number of hunger strikers at the Harmondsworth Immigration Removal Centre. Abu Qatada deportation. On the 7th of July 2013, Abu Qatada, a radical cleric arrested in 2002, was deported to Jordan after a decade-long battle that had cost the nation £1.7 million in legal fees, and numerous prior Home Secretaries had been unable to resolve. The deportation was the result of a treaty negotiated by May in April 2013, under which Jordan agreed to give Qatada a fair trial by not using evidence that may have been obtained through torture against him. May has frequently pointed to Qatada's deportation as a triumph, guaranteeing in September 2013 that he will not be returning to the UK, and declaring in her 2016 leadership campaign announcement that she was told that she couldn't deport Abu Qatada, but that she flew to Jordan and negotiated the treaty that got him out of Britain for good. The Qatada deportation also shaped May's views on the European Convention on Human Rights and European Court of Human Rights, saying that they had moved the goalposts and had a crazy interpretation of our human rights laws. As a result, May has since campaigned against the institutions, saying that British withdrawal from them should be considered. Go home advertisements. In August 2013, the Home Office engaged in an advertising campaign directed at illegal immigrants. The advertisements, in the form of mobile advertising hoardings on the back of lorries, told illegal immigrants to go home or face arrest, with an image of a person in handcuffs, and were deployed in 6 London boroughs with substantial ethnic minority populations. They were widely criticised as creating a hostile atmosphere for members of ethnic minority groups. The Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, described their language as being reminiscent of that used by the National Front in the 1970s. An adjudication by the Advertising Standards Authority said that the claim that 106 arrests were made last week was misleading, and had not been substantiated, was followed by the advertisements being withdrawn after being banned by the ASA. Passport backlog. In mid-2014, the Passport Office faced a backlog in developing processing passport applications, with around 30,000 applications hit by delays. David Cameron suggested this had come about due to the passport officers receiving an above-normal 300,000 rise in applications. It was revealed, however, that May had been warned the year before, in July 2013, that a surge of 350,000 extra applications could occur owing to the closure of processing overseas under Chancellor Osborne's programme of cuts. Around £674,000 was paid to staff who helped clear the backlog. Birmingham Schools Row. In June 2014, an inflamed public argument arose between Home Office and Education ministers about responsibility for alleged extremism in Birmingham schools. Prime Minister David Cameron intervened to resolve the row, insisting that May sack her special advisor Fiona Cunningham for releasing on May's website a confidential letter to May's colleagues, and that Michael Gove, the Education Secretary, apologized to the Home Office's head of security and counter-terrorism, Charles Farr, for uncomplimentary briefings of him appearing on the front page of the Times. Minister for Women and Equalities. Speaking at Youth for Change, the 19th of July 2014, May held the office of Minister for Women and Equality in parallel to her office of Home Secretary from 2010 to September 2012, when this role was taken over by Maria Miller. May's appointment as Minister for Women and Equality was criticised by some members of the LGBT rights movement, because she had voted against lowering the age of consent and against greater adoption rights for homosexuals, though she had voted in favour of civil partnerships. May later stated, during an appearance on the BBC's Question Time in 2010, that she had changed her mind on gay adoption. Writing for Pink News in June 2010, May clarified her proposals for improving LGBT rights, including measures to tackle homophobia in sport, advocating British society's need for cultural change. On the 2nd of July 2010, May stated she would be supporting the previous Labour government's anti-discrimination laws enshrined in the Equality Act 2010 despite having opposed it before. The Equality Act came into effect in England, Wales and Scotland on the 1st of October 2010. She did, however, announce that a clause she dubbed Harman's Law, which would have required public bodies to consider how they can reduce socio-economic inequalities when making decisions about spending and services, would be scrapped on the grounds that it was unworkable. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.